Hello and welcome to Around the World in 30 minutes with me, Alhamdulillah, Lawrence here on P&B TV Abuja. Today the headlines: Israel launches large-scale attack on Syria. And we will look at al-Assad's fall and what it means to Russia. Plus, deadly Israeli strike. We take you through now to Israeli forces that have carried out large-scale attacks across Syria, targeting 3 major airports and other strategic military infrastructure, including in the capital, Damascus. Toppled Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's prime minister says he has agreed to hand power to the opposition-led Salvation government headed by Mohammed al-Bashir. Israeli warplanes have targeted factories in Aleppo belonging to the Syrian Air Force, as well as weapons and ammunition warehouses on the outskirts of Damascus and a number of other places across Syria, according to Syrian Observatory for Human Rights (SOHR). The UK-based War Monitor said the attacks resulted in complete suspension of air defenses and put all targeted positions out of system. Israel has been attacking targets linked to Iran and Hezbollah in Syria for several years, but Russia's sudden marginalization has enabled it to hit military sites in the country with no restrictions, analyst Aaron Lund said one. Prior to the Syrian government's collapse, Israel operated under rules set in negotiations with Moscow, which appear to have included a promise not to seriously destabilize al-Assad's rule, said Nun, who is a fellow with Century International and a Middle East analyst at the Swedish Defense Research Agency. After overseeing 30 years of devastating attacks and war across Syria that has come to define Syria's civil war, the country's former president Bashar al-Assad has fled Damascus for Moscow. Following his talks with a number of participants in the armed conflict in Syrian Arab Republic, Bashar al-Assad decided to step down as the Syrian president and leave the country, instructing the government to transfer power peacefully, the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs said on Sunday. The communication continued, clarifying that while Russia was playing no part in the negotiations, it remained in contact with all factions of the Syrian opposition. Russia's official use of the word opposition to describe groups now in control of Damascus marks a shift. Just last week, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov adamantly referred to the groups as terrorists in an interview with Al Jazeera. Russia proved a critical ally of the al-Assad regime after entering the conflict in 2015. From providing diplomatic cover at the United Nations to deploying its extensive air power in defense of the regime, analysts widely credit Russia with having maintained al-Assad's rule. Through that support, President Vladimir Putin was able to greatly expand upon Russia's naval base at Tartus, first established during Syria's pact with the Soviet Union in 1971, as well as the nearby airbase of Latakia on Syria's Mediterranean coast, have proven vital to Russia's international ambitions, serving as a launching pad for operations in support of Syrian regime, as well as staging grounds for Moscow to project influence across the Mediterranean region and Africa. Both bases are important to Russia, said Mark Goleto, head of Maya intelligence of Libya, Sudan, and across Central Africa, are all largely dependent on its bases in Latakia. He cautioned that the situation around the bases remained tense. Moving ahead, at least 7 people have been killed and many wounded by an Israeli airstrike on a house in central Gaza's Nusrat camp. The house was targeted. Teams recovered 7 bodies and rescued a number of wounded people from the site of the attack. An Anadolu agency quoted a medical source at Al-Oda Hospital as saying that the victims included a woman and 3 children. The report added that the Israeli strikes severely damaged surrounding buildings as well. Meanwhile, Katz News Network reported that Palestinian footballer Mohammed Khalifa was among the victims of the attack. Medical sources have told Al Jazeera that at least that family in Sheikh Ratwan neighborhood, north of Gaza City. In addition, nearly 24 people were killed on Monday evening in an attack on a building sheltering displaced people in northern Gaza. In central Gaza's Deir el-Balah, Israeli naval forces detained 6 Palestinian fishermen who tried to sail into the Mediterranean Sea early on Tuesday, Reuters news agency reported. Since early October, Israeli forces have laid a deadly siege in areas in northern Gaza, including Jabalia and Beit Lahia. Israel's war on Gaza has killed at least 44,758 Palestinians and wounded 105,834 since October 7, 2023. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he would not stop the war in Gaza now, despite reports of renewed efforts towards talks on a ceasefire. Speaking at the news conference in Jerusalem, Netanyahu said if we end the war now, Hamas will return, recover, rebuild, and attack us again. Last month, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. Charged with bribery, fraud, and breach of trust, Netanyahu will testify 3 times a week, the court said. Netanyahu was indicted in 2019 in 3 cases involving gifts from millionaire friends and for allegedly seeking regulatory favors for media tycoons in return for favorable coverage. A few dozen protesters gathered outside the court building, some of them supporters and others demanding he do more to negotiate the release of some 100 captives still held by Hamas in Gaza. On other news around the world, after days of speculation as to the motivation and identity of the gunman, police in the United States of Pennsylvania on Monday arrested 26-year-old Lecky Nicholas Mangione. New York Police Department NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch said Mangione was arrested at a McDonald's restaurant in Altoona, Pennsylvania, after a worker recognized the suspect from police photos and alerted authorities. Mangione was found sitting at a table looking at a silver laptop and wearing a blue nickel mask, according to authorities. When asked if he had been to New York recently, Mangione became quiet and started to shake, according to a criminal complaint. Mangione was carrying a United States passport and multiple fake IDs at the time of his arrest, including one with the name Rosario, which was used to check into the hostel in New York City before the shooting, according to Tisch. Mangione also had a silencer and a gun, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder, according to the police that had reported. Police suspect the weapon to be a ghost gun, one assembled at home without a serial number, possibly made using a 3D printer. Tisch said Mangione was carrying a handwritten document which outlines both his motivation and mindset for Thompson's murder. Authorities late on Monday charged Mangione with murder, possession of an unlicensed firearm, forgery, and providing false identification to police. Police have not publicly released that handwritten note, nor offered details about its contents. U.S. media, quoting unnamed law enforcement sources, reported that the note contained the lines, "These parasites had it coming, and I do apologize for any strife and trauma, but it had to be done." Investigators said last week the words defend, deny, and depose were written on the casings of bullets found at the scene of the murder. Many have interpreted the words as a nod to tactics allegedly used by U.S. health insurance company to avoid paying claims to patients, speculating that Mangione may have acted in anger against the industry. In Indonesia, the Indonesian rescuers have recovered 10 bodies that were swept away in flash floods that hit hilly villages on the country's main island of Java, officials said, and that 2 people were still missing. Torrential rain since last week caused rivers to burst their banks, tearing through more than 170 villages in the Sukabumi district of West Java province as mud, rocks and trees tumbled down mountainside hamlets. Lieutenant Colonel Judy Horianto, who heads a rescue command post in Sukabumi, said on Monday. Landslides, flash floods and strong winds devastated 172 villages and forced more than 3,000 people to flee to temporary government shelters, Horianto said. Authorities have warned nearly 1,000 people to evacuate as more than 400 houses are threatened by extreme weather. The disasters also destroyed 31 bridges, 81 roads and 539 hectares, about 1,332 acres of rice fields, while 1,170 houses were flooded up to the roof. Extreme weather has also damaged more than 3,300 other houses and buildings, the local disaster management agency said. On Monday, rescue workers pulled out 10 bodies in the worst-hit villages of Tegalbulid, Simpenan, and Simas, including 3 children, and rescuers are searching for 2 villagers who are reportedly still missing, Horianto said. Videos circulating on social media showed flash floods caused by heavy downpours on Sukabumi, sweeping away almost everything in their path, including cars, motorcycles, buffaloes, and cows. Footage released by West Java's Search and Rescue Agency showed roads that were transformed into murky brown rivers and villages covered by thick mud, rocks, and uprooted trees as soldiers pulled out in their mods in the hamlet and other sites. The archipelago of 17,000 islands is bracing for severe weather as state meteorologists have detected 3 tropical cyclone systems that could bring heavy rainfall to various regions. Extreme weather is expected to affect areas in western and eastern Indonesia over the next few days, causing significant rainfall and high waves. Last month, flash floods and landslides in North Sumatra province killed at least 29 people. Flash floods hit the provincial city of Medan, forcing the delay in votes for regional elections in some areas. However, we have still the news coming up. But now we'll be rounding up with this. As they choose disorder, said French President Emmanuel Macron, referring to the right and left-wing politicians who last week jointly voted in favor of a no-confidence vote which toppled the government. Speaking to the nation in a televised address on Thursday, Emmanuel Macron highlighted that his opponents had chosen an anti-republic front by removing Prime Minister Michel Barnier's government over a social insecurity budget dispute on Wednesday. The right and left-wing parties have said their united decision to table a no-confidence vote was intended to improve the welfare of French citizens. But the vote was thrown France into political chaos for the second time this year and left the country without a budget for 2025. The political gridlock could affect far-right leader Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National Aran party, which has been eager to govern France for years, according to experts. France's far-right Aran party, known for its racist policies and sexism. But the new Popular Front, NFP, an alliance of left-wing parties, seized most seats, putting it ahead of the hard-right and Macron-centrist coalition. Back then, Le Pen said the tide is rising. It did not rise high enough this time, but it continues to rise, and consequently, our victory has only been delayed. The RN has since been eager to draw more public support, a strategy some say was put into practice while voting against Barnier's government. France's public deficit is equivalent to about 6.1% of its gross domestic product, and Barnier was keen to bring it in line with European Union rules, which require countries to have a budget deficit ratio of no more than 3%. Le Pen, 56, has had her eyes on the Élysée Palace, the official residence of the president, for years. In the previous 2 presidential elections, she made it to the second round, but ultimately lost to Emmanuel Macron. The RN party leader is the youngest daughter of far-right stalwart Jean-Marie Le Pen. She wants to win the 2027 presidential vote and has been trying to revamp her image by distancing herself from her father's gifts, racism, and anti-Semitic outbursts, portraying herself as a leader for the masses, but her anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim policies continue. And that's the size of our news share around the world in 30 minutes with me, Alhamdulillah Lawrence. Thank you so much for joining us. Do the same if you can next time. From me and the rest of the team, it's bye for now.